Yontav Sheni shel Galuyot Pashat B'chol HaGola, and therefore, Ben Eretz Shiyatzal Chutz Laaretz, it's Yontav for him. At least with regards to Yisur Malach. Right? It's not a question of causing machloket. Fundamentally, he's not allowed to do malach. Okay? Okay. So that's what we have. That's what we have so far. To sharpen this in fact is a machloket between in Achronim between the Chacham Tzvi and the Beit Yosef. The Chacham Tzvi said, it's on the second side. He says as follows. He was asked, Shelat b'nei chutz laaretz ha'olim le'Eretz Yisrael derech arai. People who come from chutz laaretz to Eretz Yisrael, and they're just living here in Eretz Yisrael on a temporary basis. So what's the halacha? Hechi yitnaheg b'shalosh regalim. Im kibnei Eretz Yisrael, o kibnei chutz laaretz. Okay, so what should they do? So he says, V'af, I'm reading the middle here. V'af deshalchi mitam, even though the Gemara says in Beitza that they answered them, hizaru b'minhag avotechem, that you have to adhere to the minhag. Dilma gazru shmada va'ati lekilkule. Right, perhaps it'll go back to the way it was, and therefore you should hold on to your minhag of 2 days. Hach kalkala gufa, this problem, lo shaycha el ksheim b'mkomam b'chutz laaretz. This is only a problem in chutz laaretz. Aval biotam be'eretz Yisrael lo shaycha. In Eretz Yisrael, this is not shayach. The kevan she be'eretz Yisrael isurhu lohosif yom echad ala mitzvah. Ve'ein biyad anshe Eretz Yisrael lohosif yom echad yoter me'agma katuv b'Torah. There's an isur bal tosif in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So af haba'im michutz laaretz asurim heim limhog shnei yamim tovim shel galuyot kol zman shehem be'eretz Yisrael afilu derech arai. So those who come from chutz laaretz to Eretz Yisrael, it is forbidden for them to hold 2 days, even if they're only here on a temporary basis. Kevan, and this is the key line, sha'amakom gorein. It's the physical location which generates the minhag. And this has nothing to do with the principle of chumrei makom sheyatza misham and chumrei makom shalach l'sham, because the principle of chumrei makom sheyatza misham, adhering to the chumrot of the community from which you come, or adapting new chumrot in the community to which you have arrived, that applies to minhagim where the physical location is merely coincidental. In other words, the minhag in chutz laaretz, say on Chol HaMoed, there are different minhagim in terms of putting on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. Right? Chasidim don't, some misnagdim do, some misnagdim don't. There are different minhagim, and if you go into a shul chutz on Chol HaMoed, you'll see some people wear tefillin, and some people don't wear tefillin. Okay? In Eretz Yisrael, it became the minhag hamakom not to wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed. That's the minhag hamakom. Even if you're working, we don't put on tefillin Chol HaMoed, right? If you're coming from chutz laaretz and you're going dato lachzor, so maybe you could put on tefillin b'tzina, right? But you cannot put on tefillin b'far hesya, right? I've seen machlokot arise out of tourists coming to some minyan and not aware of it. They come to some minyan in Katamon or something, and they're wearing tefillin Chol HaMoed, and everybody like jumps on them. Okay, so that was a perfect example, right? So there, whether you wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed or you don't wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, it has nothing to do with whether it's not intrinsically connected to Eretz Yisrael or Chutz Laaretz, right? So machloket rishonim, machloket achronim, what you do, it happens to be that in Eretz Yisrael the minhag developed one way, and in Chutz Laaretz the minhag developed another way. So there's no intrinsic connection between the minhag and the physical location. But in terms of yomtovsheni galuyot, it's yomtovsheni shel galuyot. In other words, the minhag is connected to the place. So that even say if you go back to the time of when they were mekadesh the chodesh al pi ha'ri'iyah, and they sent out the shluchim, right? If you were in chutz laaretz, you held 2 days, and if you were in chutz laaretz and you came to Eretz Yisrael, then you knew you held 1 day. You didn't say my minhag of chutz laaretz is to hold 2 days, and even though now I'm happen to visiting Eretz Yisrael, I'm going to hold 2 days. No, I'm going to hold 1 day because the minhag depends on the place. Okay, so that is the position of the Chacham Tzvi, which is along the lines of the Ra'avan and the Rach. Okay. Namely, that yomtovsheni-part3 is a different type of minhag. Right? The minhag is generated by the physical location, and therefore the rules of makom sheyatsa misham or makom shehalach l'sham do not apply. Okay? It's not a question of to which community do you belong. It's a question of where you physically located. Okay? So if you're in Chutzat, you hold 2 days. If you're in Eretz Yisrael, you hold 1 day. And this has ramifications, of course, l'kula for b'nei Chutzat to come to Eretz Yisrael, but also has ramifications l'chumra going the other way. That a b'nei Eretz Yisrael to go to Chutz La'aretz, 2 full days, kiddush, tefillah, everything. Again, the Chacham Tzvi only says it explicitly with regards to Bnei Chutzars coming to Eretz Yisrael. Okay? Going the other direction, he doesn't state explicitly, but it follows. Right? Rav Lichtenstein wasn't so sure. He had changed his mind. Initially, he said that according to the Chacham Tzvi, if Ben Eretz Yisrael goes to Chutz La'aretz, should hold 2 regular days of Yontif, because it's Yontif and Chutz La'aretz. Later on, he changed his mind, and he said Ben Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz shouldn't do malacha, but he should daven. He should daven chol, but he should daven chol, not do malacha, but daven chol. Okay. As opposed to the Chacham Tzvi, we have the Shut Avkat Rochel, which is the Beit Yosef, and this, of course, is going to be reflected in the Psak and the Shulchan Aruch, which we'll see in a minute. Okay. They asked the Beit Yosef the same question, and the answer here, I think, carries a lot of weight, because it's not just a theoretical answer. He says as follows. Mi sheyatsa mi Eretz Yisrael l'chutz la'aretz, v'dato lachzor, d'chol shedato lachzor, af apishu b'chutz la'aretz, harehu ki'ilu ba'aretz. Okay, he's still a Ben Eretz Yisrael. Okay, v'chein mi sheba mi chutz la'aretz Eretz Yisrael v'dato lachzor havi b'chlal b'nei chutz la'aretz. Which he goes with applying the basic principles of minhagim in general. Makom sheyatsa misham, makom shehalach l'sham, and it depends on dato lachzor. V'chein ma'asim b'chol yom. This is why when you read a tshuva, you have to be aware that of the different weights, different valences to give to different types of tshuvot. He's not just giving a theoretical answer based on how he understood the Gemara. V'chein ma'asim b'chol yom. This is in fact the way people behaved. Shana b'shana, b'chol shana b'shana. Every year, olim l'shalosh regalim michutz la'aretz la'aretz. There were always visitors here in Eretz Yisrael from Chutz La'aretz around Yontif time. V'osim yom sheni shel galuyot ketikuno ukemishpato b'chutz la'aretz. Entirely, they held 2 days Yontif as if they were Chutz La'aretz. V'lo od ela shemitkaptzim minyan mibnei Chutz La'aretz, and they make Chutz La'aretz minyanim ha'olim l'regel umitpalim tefillah v'korim b'torah u'maftirim b'navi b'brachot tchila v'sof. They hold regular 2-day Yontif as if they were in Muncie. Okay? K'mo she'osim b'yomtovsheni-part3 b'chutz la'aretz. V'davar zeh na'aseh mimei kedem. And this is the ancient minhag in Eretz Yisrael, is that B'nai Chutz La'aretz who came to Eretz Yisrael held 2 full days. B'fnei gdolei olam. And gdolei ador were witness to this. V'lo pikpek adam b'davar zeh me'olam. And nobody ever questioned this minhag. V'zoi shekasheh. Okay. So, and then so somebody asked, what about machloket, if you daven, yontif dik davening on Yom Chol? So he said, there's no problem of machloket when it comes to tefillot. Machloket only applies to malacha. Okay? And here they're not doing malacha. It's not that they are doing malacha when it's usher, they're just not doing malacha, which the Gemara says does not create machloket. So we have a machloket between the Chacham Tzvi and the Beit Yosef, which goes back to machlok between Rashi, Tosfot on one hand, and the Rach and the Ravan on the other. Basically, is yomtovsheni-part3, do I use the regular parameters of minhagim, and then it depends on dat lachzor. According to that, ben chutzlaretz that comes to Eretz Yisrael would only have to hold 1 day, right? Whether dat lachzor or not. But if I use the parameters of dat lachzor, so then we have to see when does this ben chutzlaretz, even though he's in Eretz Yisrael, when does he become a ben Eretz Yisrael, right? So we look at is dat lachzor or not. And then what if he doesn't have dat? He's here, he doesn't know if he's staying, maybe he will, maybe he won't. So that's where you get into these questions. Maybe you've seen in various shutim, if the person is single, or if he's married. Person is single, maybe we'll always say maybe he'll stay, right? Again, how much depends how much we indoctrinate you, right? So single person, maybe he'll stay. So therefore, maybe he can hold 1 day. Married person, if he has a job waiting for him in Chutz La'aretz, etc., so then dato lachzor. If he's married and he doesn't have a job in Chutz La'aretz, also maybe he'll stay. You get into all these different types of questions to determine, whether a person is a ben Eretz Yisrael or ben Chutz La'aretz. Okay, but that all is predicated upon the assumption that we use the regular rules of minhagim to determine this. Okay, so either yomtovsheni galuyot depends on this place, and it doesn't depend on the regular rules of minhagim, or we use the regular rules of minhagim. Okay, and again, I would say that the tshuva of the Beit Yosef is very powerful in terms of the fact that it's also a testimony to the ancient minhag, right? As opposed to just, okay, we can learn the Gemara this way. Which way was Rav Safra going? Was he going from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael? Was he going from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel? So you read the story, you can't really figure it out in the Gemara. That's why you have Machlokes Rishonim. But it's not only theoretical. He has a dut to that effect. Okay? In the Shulchan Aruch, right, as you would expect, so he... did I print out the Shulchan Aruch for you here? No. So in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Taf Tzadi Vav, the Mechaber says that it depends on dato lachzor. The Bnei Eretz Yisrael that come to the Bnei Chutz La'aretz that come to Eretz Yisrael, if datam lachzor to Chutz La'aretz, then they have to hold 2 days when they're in Eretz Yisrael. It's not surprising that he said that. The Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Balatanya, surprisingly, paskins against the Mechaber, like the Chacham Tzvi. He says, in the end of Siman Taf Tzadi Vav, Nechot Yom Tov, B'nei Chutz La'aretz, Sheba'u L'Eretz Yisrael, Af al pi shedatan lachzor, even though they intend to return to Chutz La'aretz, ein osim ela yom echad kibnei Eretz Yisrael. V'yesh cholkim. And those are argued, the Shulchan Aruch. Okay? So that's the psak of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Okay? Okay, now, I think that this question of whether we use the criteria of regular minhagim, or we say that no, yomtovsheni depends on your physical location, is rooted in how we understand yomtovsheni shel galuyot. Okay? That goes back to the Gemara in Beitza, which I quoted in the beginning. Okay? So let's look back at that. It's Daf Daled Amud Bet. So it says, Hashti yadina bekvia diyarcha. My tam avdina tre yome. So now that we know the correct date, why do we still persist